action.
Father was a Marine officer, so we started off in California, moved up to the Bay Area. We were in New York. We were in Italy for 3 years. Came back to California. High school was 3 different schools in 3 different states. So I was not going in the military because my dad was in the military. I didn't want anything to do with it, really. We had a lunch one day, and he just said, I think he would make a good officer, not necessarily in the Marines. You go into any of the other services. I was in college at the time, not quite sure what I wanted to do. And he said, you should look into it, but you shouldn't discount it just because of how you grew up. So I talked to some of the recruiters, and the Marines were the most impressive because they didn't want me. They said, we don't need you. And then I had to go fight to get in, basically. And so that's how I ended up in the Marine Corps. Graduated school in 1989, and I started looking into that in 1987. And at that time, there was nothing really going on. There was no conflicts. There was no situations that kind of triggered to go in. But the way I went through was the Platoon Leadership Corps, PLC, where you were not paid to go to school, but you went to a couple of the officer boot camps during the summers. And then when you graduated, then you went into, you were commissioned from there. They kind of gave me a purpose towards the end. I knew what I was going to do. Definitely started getting in shape more, started running more. When I first signed up, I just went ground. Had no real aviation background. My father was infantry, so I decided to just go ground. So my first summer, that's what I went in. The second year where it was going through, he couldn't fill his quota. My recruiter couldn't fill his aviation quota, and you had to have 20/20 vision. Back then you couldn't have any LASIK or any corrective vision, so I had 20/20. And on the ASVAB, which is basically the SATs for military, you have to, so they can quantify where you are, you have to score a certain percentage. So I did well there. So he said, you're going to go air because you fit all the requirements. I was a little unsure of it, but he made a joke. He said, don't worry about the school, because he had a lot of Marine aviators that weren't that smart, and they'll dumb it down for you. But so that's kind of how it went. My recruiter said, you're going to go air. Everybody knows about boot camp, Marine boot camp, and it's pretty intense and yelling. The purpose of but an enlisted person or somebody who comes out of high school and doesn't go to be an officer, they're not allowed to quit. They sign up and they're going to go through one way or the other. The officers, to make the math easy, they're going to take 100 people that summer, knowing they're only going to take 45, or 45 will end up doing the swearing in, because they'll either get medically discharged, they'll have some sort of injury, they'll just not pass what they need, or they just decide it's not what they want to do and they just don't sign up. So it's very, very physical, much more physical than the enlisted side, because you have to lead from the front. And if you're a fat body and you can't run, you're not going to be able to lead the guys from the front. So you got to be very smart, got to be a good leader, or have potential to be a good leader, but also be physically fit, because I was an aviation student. So normally you have a 4.5 year contract. The time you get to the fleet where you're finished with everything and you're doing what you're getting paid to do, that's about the 3.5 year mark. That's why they add an extra 4 years onto your contract. If you're an aviator, the jet pilots go through a lot longer process. So the first part was just being a good student, and it's just not unlike going to college. You need to be where you need to be, know your material, and then apply it in the aircraft. And then you get into a squadron, and then you're the junior officer, and you are just learning that new aircraft or whatever, the tactical aircraft. So there was a lot of being a student and not necessarily leading anybody until that came later, about the 4 or 5 year mark. When I finished up with flight school, so Pensacola, Florida, Corpus Christi, Texas, Quantico, Virginia, those were all the training bases. Once I got to the fleet, it was up the road there at Tustin. So it was at Hangar 2, the Tustin Air Base. Checked in there in 1992, and that was great. I actually chose the aircraft because I wanted to come fly out of Tustin, because I wanted to live in Newport Beach. I was a young 20-year-old, want to surf in the morning, go fly in the afternoon. So that was a great base. We were there till 96, and that base closed, and then we transferred over to Tustin, El Toro here, another 2-3 years. I would say that there's nothing too minor to do. Best advice I got was from my father. When I was going into the Marines, he said, look, first time you check into a unit, you're going to be the SLJO officer. And S is, your stupid little jobs officer, but there's a different word we use for that. So you're going to be there and you're going to have the one job that nobody wants, but you're the new guy. And it may be the coffee mess. And he said, whatever that is, just jump in and make it the best that it is. And that's exactly what happened. It was prophetic. I checked in a new squadron and I had the coffee mess. And it was just folders, crystal stuff. And I just started charging people and making it the best coffee mess ever. And over at Hangar 2 over there at Tustin, and so the other squadrons would come over. So the point is that if you're going to do that for that type of job, let's put him on to something else. And so I was moved then to the maintenance department, and that's where you really want to be, because that's where the Marines are and that's where the aircraft are. So whatever job you're going to do, just do the best, and then your boss will see that and they'll move you on to something else. You're so worried about your aircraft and flying and all the knowledge, and then you're the new guy, and then you have enlisted people, and just knowing the nuance of, here's an enlisted guy who's saluting you and calling you sir, but he's been in for 25 years. And some people don't understand that he's really in charge, and he wants to make you a better officer. You have to allow him to be a better officer, and it takes a while to balance that nuance from there, and just to how to be a good leader when you've never done it before, because you walk into a room and there's 40 young Marines there and you're in charge, even though you've never done it before. So it's just knowing that what you don't know and asking questions. This is when Somalia had sparked off. And the first deployment I went on, we call them Westpacs, the Western Pacific, with 13th MU, Marine Expeditionary Unit. We knew what was going on in Somalia, but it was before the internet. And so we were in Singapore at the time, and we were about to do an exercise there when we got the call that something had gone down in Mogadishu. And that was the October 3rd and 4th Black Hawk Down event, with the movie and the books and all that. So we left Singapore very quickly, and then 4 days later, we were off the coast of Somalia. So that was the first eye-opener for me, because I'd been a student pilot, hanging out, surfing, having fun, being a marine aviator, but waking up off the coast of East Africa, immediately changed the environment, because you're out in the middle of the ocean. There's a certain smell there, but it woke you up in the middle of the night because you could smell all the tires burning. And if you've seen the movie, it's very accurate how it was depicted. So it was a wake-up call, being 24, 25, that, oh, okay, this is what I get paid to do. And we didn't know all the details, but we learned quickly that, Warrant Officer Durant was still captive there. The 117 people had died the day or two before, and the Black Hawk Downs had been down. So it was all of a sudden, it was game time. So that was a big adjustment. General Adid was controlling the other tribes he was the most powerful one, so he controlled the food, and the UN tried to solve originally it was a famine, naturally occurring famine, and due to the wars, UN was just putting the food in the airport, but then Adid would control all the food and he wouldn't disperse it. So we came in there and we helped fly the food away, and we were shooting or getting shot at, flying into the hinterland to all the tribes people. And we were in our fourth month, and it's on the equator. It's very hot. Morale's kind of down. And so we had landed. They were offloading some of the bags of food, and the Somali people, and just seeing that they could see the UN flag, American flag. They saw a flag on our shoulder, and they were, totally grateful, and wanted to come up and give us trinkets, that kind of thing. So that was the first time I realized that I am doing something. You're not watching it on news. It's it's passing. This is something that was on the news. I'm physically here, making things happen. So that was a pretty eye-opener for being 25 years old. But my career path was pretty circuitous. I didn't intend to stay in as long as I did. I signed up to be a pilot, and I did that. I did my 2 deployments overseas. And my contract was up in 1996, 97. They were downsizing from the first Gulf War. So I went to the reserves, still stayed as an aviator. So as a reserve officer, you kind of turn into a contract guy where different jobs come up. So it was much different. I didn't do a lot of flying, but as you get more senior, there's more staff type jobs and filling unique different types of jobs, which I end up doing. Events like 9/11 happen, then you go in a completely different direction. I deployed right after 9/11. I was with a unit that was kind of like consulting, if you will, for the different bases. So we were deployed in October, so less than a month after 9/11, to Kuwait, to determine where everybody would go in the northern borders of Kuwait, where we would cross the border, where the different regiments would set up. And then there was Marines in Afghanistan, so that Camp Doha base that we were at in Kuwait was also a support base. So we were supporting the Marines that were in Afghanistan. So did that for about 9 months, came back, and then I was with the unit, and we went back there for the actual stepping off October of 2003. And then it was just setting up bases in Fallujah and back and forth. So my job I ended up doing was running the bases. I was camp commandant. So set up one base, move forward, find out how to turn the lights on, tents, and whatever the case might be, the security's all around. So that's what I ended up doing for most of the time there. Stepping off the helicopter at El Toro, flying over the ocean at night, is just as dangerous as flying in combat. That's why they give us hazard pay. You get $600-700 extra a month, because I lost more friends in the Pacific Ocean doing training hops in the middle of the night with night vision goggles where you couldn't see your hand in front of your face. So you get used to that, and that's that part. But then there's also the difference of, we were in it, and, there was every now and then that little hole would appear in your aircraft, but we were flying so fast that, there's nothing you can do about it. It's just a mindset. You get in, do your job. You're also being pretty young. That's what you get paid to do. And, you didn't want to be sitting back here on the base. You wanted to be forward. So I wanted to be cavalier about it, but, you're in front of all your other buddies too that are flying. And so, everybody's nervous. And if they say they're not, they're lying. So it's a dangerous business, but that's what you signed up for. So Bosnia was an interesting one. So I was in Newport Beach working on getting my airline ratings, building up hours. And so they got called up because I was a helicopter pilot and I'd done combat search and rescue. If a pilot gets shot down, you have to coordinate picking him up. So there was the group that was in Italy, northern Italy, that it was a combat search and rescue group, and they wanted me as the Marine representative. So it was a quick fill billet. It was supposed to be 6 months. So I went there, and that was for the Allied force for the Serbian Air War. So I checked in there January of '99, and then 3 months later, everything kicked off. The F-117 got shot down. I was a part of that and helping coordinate to pick up the F-117 pilot. Vader 2-1, I believe the call sign. And then shortly after that, an F-16 got shot down. We helped rescue him, so we were 100% successful on that. In Bosnia in general, I did get in there, and that was another eye-opener. We were in Sarajevo. The 1984 Winter Olympics were there. The first world, even though it was a communist country, at that time it was Yugoslavia. But going into Sarajevo after the Civil War and seeing the destruction, the Hilton, the main 20-story building there, had been completely shot through and destroyed. So that's where you kind of get an eye-opener that not everything's good, and no matter how good things are, it could go overnight, could just go completely sideways. I used to fly here on base. For whatever reason, the Major General McCorkle, he was the wing commander, and he flew, because in Vietnam he flew in my squadron, the Purple Foxes, and I just always got assigned to fly with him. It was a lot of fun, and he'd said, "Hey, that was a great flight. You never know when this could be my last flight." And, I've been fortunate to go there, and I never really took that into granted, took it for what it was. But when I was overseas with the doing the search and rescue thing, after the Allied force had finished, I got assigned to go to the Hungarian Air Force Army, because there was a partnership for peace. All the former Soviet Union countries that were trying to get into NATO, we were having to interview them, and I was a night vision goggle instructor. I used to teach instructors how to teach night vision goggles. So I went over there to evaluate what they had, and it was a very rudimentary old system. So I got to spend a week and a half flying HIP 18s, which is counterpart to what I flew, and also the Mi-24 Hind. So I have a picture of when I got out of the Mi-24, and that was a Russian-built helicopter, and didn't realize that was the last time I was going to fly military aircraft. So, but if you're going to have one that was the last one, not many people have flown that aircraft as the United States. So I went in not intending it to be a career. I went in for originally the 4-year commitment, then they turned me into a pilot, and that turned into 7 years, and then 7 years went like that. I wasn't ready to get out, but that's what happened. Then I went to the reserves, and then all these opportunities kept popping up. So did I get what I wanted out of it? Yes. I think just being able to call yourself a Marine is a pretty profound statement. And then on top of that, if you interview my friends or my bosses or Spears, I'd like to think that they said, I was a solid Marine, and it's easy not to be a good Marine, and they'll let you know. I hope that they think that they knew that I was leading from the bottom down, that I was looking out for them. I really didn't care what my bosses thought we were doing or how we were doing it, but I knew the capabilities of the Marines at that time, and made sure they had what they need to do their job and to succeed, and that I had their best interest in them. So I think that's, out of everything I did, just like he was a solid Marine and did his job and didn't complain. My first transition was when I got out and I was trying to go into the airlines, and so that was interesting. It was the same environment. You had a lot of school, going to the American Airlines Academy, just having to perform. And then once you got to the flight line, it was a big difference because it was the first time with civilians, excellent pilots, but first time I went into the crew lounge, you could clearly see the difference between the civilians and the military pilots, because the military pilots are a little more squared away with their uniforms. The civilian guys, even though they're great pilots and they worked harder to get there, it was just a little difference on professionalism. I enjoyed it thoroughly. It was what I wanted to do. If 9/11 hadn't hit, I'd still be there. It was later in life, so after I'd finished up the Marine Corps doing active duty, I was hired to do entitlement development and real estate because at that time I had gotten married, wanted to settle down, have a little more focused home life. So there wasn't much of there still was a mission. There was a problem that needed to get solved. You have to go figure it out, and just dealing with the city and the people. So it was not too much of a transition. So I know plenty of people that were graduated from Harvard and MIT, and I asked them, why are you here? And they're like, well, it doesn't matter how much money I make or what I do. I can't buy a ride in an F-18, but I'm going to fly F-18s, I'm going to fly helicopters, and also just being a Marine is what I've always wanted to do. And it was going to be their initial job for 6-7 years, and they get out, and from there they're forever a Marine, and they have that experience of being an F-18 pilot or whatever the case may be. My last commercial flight was obviously September 10th of 2001, and then a couple of years after that, the helicopter flights when I was over with NATO. But other than flying just as a passenger, it really hasn't been much. That's why it's been a lot of fun coming here to the museum. The mission of the Flying Leatherneck Aviation Museum is to honor the history of the Marine Corps and aviation. A lot of people don't realize the Marines have been there since the very beginning of 1917, flying aircraft. So our particular museum, it's been at El Toro here since the beginning when aircraft got old. They would roll them over to Hangar 244, and there was an impromptu museum that was created. In 1999, when the base closed, they moved everything down to Miramar, and it was opened up back there. But then when COVID hit, they used it as an excuse not to open back up again. That's when the city of Irvine decided that we want to bring the museum back and actually do a real air and space style indoor museum. My civilian job at the time, it was right across the freeway. I was doing entitlements and building apartment projects, and I could see this building from my office window. And when I heard that the museum was relocating up here, I talked to President Brigadier General Aguilar, and I said, you're going to need some help with the city of Irvine. I've done projects, and to get that building permitted, it's going to take a little bit of an effort. So I started volunteering, coming over, and then when they got this hangar, I got the keys, and I just started. It was all volunteer-based first year, and then I got so involved that it was a lot more fun being here. So we just transitioned, and I came over full time in July of 24. If you look around and you see all these aircraft, these are historical aircraft, and we have some very unique aircraft that nobody else has, and we just happen to have them. They've been bouncing around between Miramar and El Toro. Every one of these aircraft has been flown out of El Toro at one time. The one aircraft we have, CH-46, the type of aircraft I flew, that one actually flew the ambassador out of Vietnam, so it is a defining moment of when April 30th, 1975, that the Vietnam War ended, because we brought the ambassador and the flag out. The new construction starts next month in October, and that'll be a lot of work. We have about a 19-month build, and then moving the aircraft over and hanging them from the roof, the ceiling, and just getting it open. That's going to be a lot of work. And then long term is just have it as a world-class museum that people are coming from. There's already people that are members that are from Europe, and they find out about this. So I want it to be a destination place, and when they walk in for the very first time, they're not underwhelmed. They just are shocked at what they're seeing. So marine aviation's its whole purpose, like I stated before, is to support Marines. And it's not just the museum is just for pilots. We're also going to have the maintainers, the guys that fix the aircraft, the ordnance men, the Marines that got inside the helicopters. They have a lot of fond and not so fond memories of getting in and out of the helicopters. So, and there is no Marine museum. There is one in Quantico. It's an excellent one. It's a national museum. It's on the East Coast. There's no Marine museum on the West Coast. Our goal is that when an infantry officer comes in, or any infantry Marine comes in with their family, they're going to say, hey, this is an aviation museum, but this is Marines, and we're definitely going to be focusing on that. That's another exciting thing. One reason I'm here as well, because the great part, it's fascinating what's going on, and it's just almost overwhelming scope that the city has taken on, to include that it's Park County and 5 Points, the development side, but they're building a community here. And we're a small part of that, but we're partnering with the city, and they provided the land, they provided funding to get the aircraft up here and to start the building. And the Flying Leatherneck Aviation Museum will be a flagship there, along with Pretend City, which is a children's museum. Orange County Music and Dance will be the other museum that's here, with other couple of ones that are trying to get here to the Cultural Towers West. I have quality people around me. I have my family around me. I'm content. The basic thing that everybody really wants in life is that they're valued, that they are contributing, And sometimes they're in an environment where they can't do that, or they're not given the opportunity to do that. So wisdom for me, I would say, is just knowing what you do not know, and then having the confidence to ask questions and state, I don't know what you're talking about, or I don't know anything about this. Can you explain it to me so I can get a better decision on that, or opinion? I'd like the community to remember me, that I donated my time. I tried to make something happen at the museum, or with the Marine Corps, or just volunteer work that helping people out. When my daughters are away and they're traveling, or my wife's away, that's, just kind of, but when everybody's home, even if we're not doing everything together, but I know they're home, that's kind of the happy place. And something a little more simple, it's like anytime the Chargers are beating up on the Raiders or the Broncos or anybody else in the league. So anytime Chargers win, that's a happy place. Outside of the career, just being a good father. I got daughters going into college soon, and just being there to support that, doing some more traveling, and just, but to be honest, I'm looking forward to the next 10 years here at the museum, and just because it's starting from nothing, and just being a part of that. And, in 10 years from now, I'll probably step down in whatever capacity that may be, but that's going to be a big legacy, is not my legacy, but I'll have been a part of that. My kids will bring their kids to that and say, hey, Grandpa Grant, he was, this is what he helped put together many years ago. Every day is different, and we've never opened up a museum before. We're kind of figuring it out as we go, but it will be successful, and I'm glad that I'm a part of it.